Your name, please, sir.
James W. Nance.
Date of birth
December 23rd, 1931.
and place of birth.
East St. Louis, Illinois.
Thank you. Okay, first question. Were there any other relatives in the military in your family at all?
Yes, I had an uncle who was in World War II.
Where did he serve? In Japan or in
Neither.
Germany?
He never left stateside.
Oh.
He got into the war on the late side, so he stayed here in the States so that somebody else could go overseas.
He telling you much about it or not really?
Not too much.
Yeah.
I didn't. We had too big of an age difference at that time to really.
So you were a little kid anyway.
Well, no, I wasn't that young, except that he was back here in the Midwest and I was in California. So
that's right, because Mom moved with you out there.
whatever, yeah.
Okay, second question. How long did you serve for?
3 years I volunteered.
Oh, that was, yeah, did you volunteer or did you get drafted?
I volunteered simply because I felt that I'm in for 2 and I might as well get in for 3. And at the time they said if you volunteer for 3 years, that was in the 6th Army area on the West Coast, I would have no reserve obligation.
And you went
So I went for 3.
50 to 53?
51 to 54.
54. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What branch of service did you pick from?
Well, I chose United States Army because coming out of high school, I just finished ROTC training.
Oh, okay. So Army was just the best choice?
At the time, it seemed to be, yeah. That's simply because of this reserve obligation situation. It seemed to be the best choice.
Oh, you had to have...
I did not have to have reserve because I went in for 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Fourth question. Where did you get basic training at first?
Fort Ord, California, and because of the severity of the Korean conflict, I was in the first group to go from 8 weeks basic to 16 weeks basic.
Oh.
They doubled it.
How come?
Well, because it didn't feel the ones getting 8 weeks
were
getting enough training. Lose too many troops, so they went to 16 weeks.
Any friends from your neighborhood or anybody else go with you to basic, or just did you go by yourself?
No. Knew no one from my outfit in basic had a lot of people from California and a lot from Louisiana. It seemed to be the mix, and a few in between, but mostly that was the 2 majorities in the group.
Okay.
Why the Army chose to send people from Louisiana to the West Coast, I'll never know.
I don't know either. Next question. What were the conditions like at basic training?
Well,
when you first started out and then when you finished up?
Well, when you first start, it's very restrictive. After you're in there a while and you get a few weeks under your belt, you start getting weekend passes. You don't get gigged. You know what they want, what you want to have the rifle clean, and you pass inspection. And after I think it was about the 4th week, I was allowed to keep a car on base as long as I had insurance.
That's
cool. I did. So I had a chance to go on the weekends to kind of move around. And then when you got up around the 14th, 15th week, just about had all you needed. And a couple of times we were called out to settle some disputes in some of the other barracks that where they only had 8 or 9 weeks and had too much beer on the weekend and that kind of stuff.
Do you have any real jerks for training officers, or not really?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, we had what they call cadremen, and they had already been through the cycle, and they were waiting to go back to OSC, Officers Candidacy School.
Oh, thank you.
And some of them were jerks. The first time I fell out for inspection for guard duty, I was chosen for guard. instead of KP.
I bet you like that
Sergeant.
instead of
Well, that's better than KP. The sergeant said, "When'd you shave last?" I said, "I just did." He said, "Well, go back in and put a razor in it this time." So I had to shave again. And from that day to today, I've been shaving all the time. That's true.
I know. I just think it's kind of funny. When you know in basic, did you ship out to Japan with the same people or with different set of people?
No. Well, we went on a ship with 3,500 people.
That's right.
But I was part of the advanced party on the USS Gordon. It was a 3-stacker. It was the first trip out of mothballs. They pulled it out.
What's a 3-stacker?
Oh, that 3 smokestack.
Oh, it wasn't
judging.
Just a passenger liner?
Well, it was. I don't know whether it was a converted liner or what. Of course, my scrapbook's got a picture of it. But it was a good-sized ship. And there were about 1,000 nurses and wax going over at the same time.
That was fun.
Well, not for me, but for some of the guys it was.
Take
Take it back. It was a 2-stacker.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, did you have a choice of jobs to pick from at all? Or?
On the ship?
Yeah.
Sure did. Either we had to volunteer, which I volunteered to serve food every second day. So that meant I had a day off.
Oh, that's not bad.
Otherwise, I would have been assigned. See, I was part of the advanced party, so they told us right away, "You're going to work. And you might as well volunteer, you can get your choice." So first day at sea was a lot of fun because here I am serving food, and most everybody that came through was green-faced from being seasick, and a lot of people I didn't have to serve a lot the first day. Afterward, we took 14 days to get to Japan. And after about half the trip,
that was your
everybody settled down.
Second spot for training? Japan? Or did you just that drop off?
No, you want to talk about what happened when I got there? All right. When we got into Yokohama, by the way, the last day and a half, we caught the edge of a typhoon, and one of the guys broke his leg because he got swept around on the gangplank. But oh yeah. So anyway, when we were out in the parade grounds in Yokohama, getting ready to go down and zero in our M1 rifles so that we could be shipped to Korea.
What's an M1 for people that don't know?
Well, M1 was the standard rifle at the time. It was a gas-operated, semi-automatic 1901 Garand. M1 it was called, and they were heavy, but that's what the Army had.
Is that what they
standard issue at the time?
Did they issue that at basic or?
Oh well, we used one in basic, and then we were issued one
on
the
board
parade ground, ready to go down to zero it in, so that when we got to Korea, we would shoot what we were aiming at.
Oh, okay.
When a sergeant, I remember, rolled up and hollered out about 300 names, of which mine was one of them. And he says, "You lucky SOBs, you don't have to go to Korea right now. Some of you are going to additional schooling." And I guess I had done well enough on the test when you first go in that they sent me to radio operator school.
The test in basic? Oh, okay.
Right. See, I had backing up a little bit here, if you want to know about it. I had been pulled out with about 64 people to go to counterintelligence school back in Baltimore, Maryland.
What, learning foreign languages and all that?
No. Being the kind that would go after deserters and criminal things
kind
and
of
stuff like
spy
that.
versus spy type stuff.
I guess. And then it narrowed it down to where there were 8 of us who were going to go. And then the day they fingerprinted us and took full side and front pictures, and all that, and going to send us back to Baltimore, Maryland. And the man looked at my little fingers that are curled. He said, "Oh, that's a birthmark." I said, or he said, "Oh, you're disabled." I said, "No, that's just a birthmark. As you can see, they straighten out. There's no real problem." But I guess they felt that could be an identifying mark. So I was dropped out along with one other fella who, it wasn't because of education, because he had a master's in music. So the 2 of us dropped out. I was offered officer candidacy school because of, again, my test results. But the lifespan of a second lieutenant in Korea at the time was down to about 2.5 days. That's about how long they were just chewing them up. So I said, no, I'll go over as a dog face.
You went over as a private?
Well, yeah. I'd rather take my chances than I didn't want to lead anybody into a patrol and get cut up. So I took my chances, and that's why then I got pulled out for radio operators training. I had that or cooks and bakers, and then, of course, I took the radio operators.
Oh, you didn't take cooks and bakers.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you.
Why not?
Perpetual KP. No thanks.
That's true. Were you in favor of the U.S. being involved in the Korean War when you volunteered, or when you got to Japan, or did you really care, or anybody else really say anything about it?
All right. When I went into the so-called police action, we always laugh, why didn't they send cops? I didn't know the political ramifications of conflict, but I had the idea that, hey, all the people ahead of me have served World War I, World War II. I would serve. I felt it was my duty, my patriotic duty. If the Army needed me, if America needed me, I would go. Once I got to Korea, that changed in about 2 weeks. As soon as we got under fire and other things, it soon came down to, gee, you don't want to let your partner down because you don't want your partner to let you down.
And you didn't want to die.
Exactly. You didn't want to let, if you were sleeping in the foxhole and he was on guard duty, you didn't want him to go to sleep, because then chinks could come across the line, cut you up, shoot you, whatever they wanted to do. Capture you, which you didn't want to get captured because of some of the things they did to our guys. But it came down to really survival for your buddy, the other guy. Patriotism kind of got pushed to the back.
How long do you stay in Japan for?
I was in Japan from January through Easter, which was April that year.
That's all the time you had for training?
That's right. And then Easter Sunday morning, we shipped out from Sasebo, Japan, to Incheon. No, I'm sorry, Pusan. We left out of Incheon.
What did you do during school?
Well, we did field exercises. We were on an island on the southern tip of Japan called Eta-jima. Not Iwo Jima, but Eta-jima, ETA. What it had been in World War II was a naval training station for the Japanese Imperial Navy.
Oh, geez.
They had gigantic guns that, turrets, and they practiced. They would water around it, of course. And we used to go out in rowboats and things like that for something to do. But it was all different phases of learning your Morse code and also proper voice operation of the radio. And you got your speeds up. I was an intermediate speed, which was up to about 25 words to the minute I could send on the key.
Wow.
Morse code at those times. I knew them all.
Well, you guys didn't have those backpacks for radios, did you?
Some of them.
Some, but you had the big honking monsters.
We were in a radio truck, which was your communication net for battalions. Okay. Not divisions, but battalions. And so underneath your battalions, you had 4 or 5 companies. So we were always in communication with the bigger guys, but generally you worked out of your truck, but you also had to know how to string antennas and replace the batteries in some of the units and handle remotes. And
so it wasn't all cakework. It was kind of, you had to learn. You had to learn how to use your hands a lot.
We had a lot of field exercises. Now, the best part about the whole time in Japan there was on this island was a lot of schooling, including cooks and bakers. We used to walk in there and you could order your steak the way you wanted it. You sat at a table with flowers.
Geez.
You never did KP duty because the local people did it. It was, if you wanted your eggs differently, they just say, well, would you step to one side and we'll let you know as soon as they're ready, because they were warning. See?
Too bad you couldn't have stayed there.
Oh, that part of it was extremely nice. Oh, yeah.
Oh, What was the name of your unit name? Your unit, and were you like infantry, cavalry, or were you?
In Korea?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because now we're moving into Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was assigned to the 25th Division.
What's a division?
Division, I don't know the exact number of people that makes up a division, but
But
it's those are what usually countries throw into battles. They'll throw in 2 divisions here and 1 division there and that kind of a stuff. So the 25th Division, which by the way was involved in the push when the Chinese came in, they've been pushed back to the Pusan perimeter, it's called. Yep. So I was assigned to the 25th Division. Within a division, there was a regimental combat team called the 27th, which was also known as the Wolfhounds. 27th Regimental Combat Team, known as the Wolfhounds. Okay. They had fought in World War II in the Black Forest of Germany, and that's where the name Wolfhounds.
Oh.
They got it, I understand, from history, and it stuck. A regimental combat team is almost self-supported. We had tanks, we had artillery, we had mortars, we had the usual frontline stuff. We had the so-called half tracks with the quad 50s on it.
What are quad 50s?
That's 4 50 caliber machine guns mounted on the back of a half track, which can go almost anywhere.
Oh, geez.
And when they open up, it's a lot of stuff going over.
What's I gonna ask? Oh, did you Oh, doggone it! I forgot my question. Oh well, we'll go back. I forgot my question.
Okay.
That's right. What were your first impressions when you got on Korean soil? And you looked around.
Well, the southern part of Korea was pretty. See, when we landed in Pusan, they put us on a train and we went up and we had to sleep on the floor of the train because there were snipers in the woods at night.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah, we couldn't just sit there and enjoy it. During the day, though, we saw quite a bit of Korea. This was April. And we saw a few waterfalls coming out of the hills, and as we got closer to the 38th, though, we saw less and less foliage because, and then they took us by trucks, half tracks, they call it, or half tonners, up to the front line, or up to our outfit, rather. Then you could just see the rocks had been hit with mortars and artillery, and a lot of the foliage was gone. It was kind of bare right at the 38th from all the combat, shooting at each other, you know.
Did you think it was like a dump, or did it just...
Well, no, it just was reality that here you were, and...
combat now, yeah.
Yeah. Now, speaking of outfits, when I first got there, I was about 12 miles from the front line, the actual end of our line. And we felt pretty safe.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you. Did you have any air support at all, too, or?
Well, it got to the point then where the Chinese had, or North Koreans had big guns, and those could shoot about 27 miles.
Jeez.
Oh yeah.
You bet you didn't feel safe then.
Well, we didn't feel safe because the Saturday before Mother's Day, that afternoon was the first time I really got shelled. And the shells just started walking toward our encampment, so they knew exactly where to shoot. And we know that the ROK helpers, ROK, Republic of Korea helpers, we know they were infiltrators and they were getting information back because every day there was a pattern on the ground that was changed the way these 2 big scarfs were like, or canvas things, so that the air guys would know where our lines ended and theirs were. Well, sometimes they would put additional ones on their side. They knew the exact ones we had, so, you know, our guys would not strafe or bomb or napalm that particular...
Oh, they had napalm back then.
Oh, did they?
I thought it was just Vietnam.
No, napalm was used a lot there. Anyway, we were shelled on that Saturday, and the shells started walking about every second shell was maybe another 6 or 8 feet closer, and a couple of them took out our mess tent. No great loss. But anyway, then it stopped about 50 feet from this bunker that I had ran into along with a couple of officers and about 10 or 15 other guys. I cracked my nose on my helmet getting in there because it was coming in close. And incidentally, I'd like to know this, I was cussing like hell that day. And then the next day, I mean, when you get in the Army, the minute you drop your hand from joining, that's all they do is everybody cusses at you. And you, being 19 years old, I didn't know any better. I started picking it up, sure, be one of the boys, you know. But then the next day, on Mother's Day, we're out there building sandbags to reinforce our bunker so we don't get hurt anymore. And I was thanking the good Lord for saving me, and I dawned on him, gee, you can't ask him to curse one day and bless the next. So I made it a point since that day to try not to use GD. And I guess I haven't lost my temper enough to use it more than about a dozen times since then. So anyway, we got shelled and built bunkers, and then
that was
our first.
Back in the back, though, right?
Well, we were, like I said, a few miles back from the front. But then I went to 3 different sections of Korea during my 8 months there. I spent, I forgot how many days now, at the first spot. And then we went to the rear. And we were assigned to another spot where we relieved the Turks. The Turks were very dirty housekeepers. They weren't exactly clean fighters either. They loved hand-to-hand combat. They used to volunteer to go out and patrol at night so they could cut some of these people up. They carried big knives.
Oh, nuts.
I remember some guys just complaining because they'd been assigned to their own artillery, which put them in the rear a little ways. They built bonfires so that the Chinks would come out and investigate. Oh, sure, they loved the fight. They were the toughest fighters over there with the Turks. They were also the worst housekeepers. So when we relieved them at, the first place was Heartbreak Ridge.
So you were on the front right away then. You were 3 times.
We were shelled, like I said, in a short time. When we went up, that was called Heartbreak Ridge. Then we went back to the rear for a short time. I don't know, 3 weeks. We repaired everything. Then we went up to a place called Sandbag Castle, which is where the Turks were. And there we got shelled every day. Every single day we were shelled.
Now, was that the front?
Oh, yeah. Being a radio operator, what we were, there was a tall ridge where Abel, Baker, and Charlie companies were. Those were infantrymen. The bottom of the hill is where we were. Behind us was Dog, or D Company, which was mortars. So
they'd lob the mortar over your head then?
Most of the time. One day they didn't. They didn't have enough dynamite, or not dynamite, little explosive packets that they put on their mortars. They didn't have enough to get it over the ridge. They fell between the top of the ridge and us, and they started dropping.
Oh,
so luckily we got on the radio right away and stopped that.
But you're pissed off at them.
Yes, put it mildly, yes. We had a sniper shooting at us. One bullet hit the dust maybe 6-7 feet from my feet. And a couple of guys opened up and must have got him or quieted him down because we didn't have any more from him. Little interesting thing that we had, I'll tell you, at Sandbag Castle. Every morning at 6 a.m. and every night at 6 p.m. for 5 minutes, we had Operation Rainfall. Every weapon that you had, if you wanted to fire it, you did.
Oh.
So everything let loose for 5 minutes. All the ammunition guys were testing,
You don't want to keep your old ammunition around?
Well, if you had wet ammunition or you just wanted to zero something in, particularly the mortars and the quad 50s and the long toms, which were 105 and 150 tom-toms, they called them. And anyway, the Chinks crossed the line. Heck, they just...
so didn't they fire back at you every time you fired?
They just went into their bunkers and waited for 5 minutes, then they came back.
Oh, gee.
See, a lot of people don't realize this, but we could not, in the height of Korea, If you got fired at, you had to ask permission to fire back.
You couldn't engage right away.
Nope.
Oh.
Ammunition was rationed. General Van Fleet came back to the Congress and told him about it, and a congressman called him a liar. I was there. You ask anybody who was there that was in combat, and they'll tell you that a lot of the times you were allowed so much a day. So what you try to do is you try to let it build up so you could use more in case they pushed on you. And we had a big push one night. Kept us up all night, and we lost a lot of our guys, but they didn't yield. We didn't know whether the line was going to hold, but it did. And we had our engine warmed on the truck. We had extra antennas strapped on it so that we could go if we had to leave. And those kind of things happen. But we had a tank up there at the top of the ridge, and he used to open up, and then when he finished, they'd shoot at him, or they'd miss him over the ridge and come down on our side. So, but one little interesting thing, one early morning, there was a second lieutenant with the tank and the guys up there, and they were watching these stretcher bearers bringing up a stretcher with a blanket over it, and he didn't think anything about it. He thought they were picking up their dead the night before. And they left, and then they come up again. And suddenly he says, "Open fire!" And they did. And it just blew everything up. What they were doing, they had ammunition underneath the blanket. They were bringing ammunition up to the front. Sure. And he dawned on him, you don't have a heavy stretcher coming up. You do only going back. So he realized what it was.
Ammunition.
Sure. So he realized what it was. The tank opened up and just blew him right out of the saddle.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah.
What were your living conditions like in Korea?
Bad and very bad. Well, we were in a bunker. One time in the rear, I remember being laced up in my sleeping bag. It was cold. I had a rat run across me. Oh, yeah. Food was up and down. Sea rations, you almost stuck with it. We had a dog around us named Short Brown. And one time, I remember sitting on my helmet, eating some food that the cooks tried to prepare for us, and it was...
Oh, you had cooks there, though?
Well, they would bring food up from the rear. They wouldn't cook right there. No, they'd cook it in the back, and they'd try to bring it up, and, yeah, they did their best to give you what they could. And I couldn't eat this stuff, whatever it was, and I tried to give it to the dog, and the dog turned his nose up. I showed the cook that, and the cook didn't appreciate that.
Pretty bad, then.
At times. Now, I have to tell you this. We were over at our third place around Thanksgiving. They brought up a hell of a good meal for us. They even brought a band up. Yeah.
Oh, gee.
Oh, yeah. We were maybe 10 miles from the front at that point. Again, we were getting shelled, but we had camouflage over us, and we felt fairly safe. And this band was greener than green. When you're over there a while, Matt, you learn what the difference in sound between our gun shooting it out,
and
their gun it coming in, incoming mail, we called it. We soon learned what it was, because coming in, it had a whistle to it. That's why when I watch MASH, sometimes you'll see me get up and leave, because they use a genuine soundtrack. I don't know where they got it, but it's the real thing. So it makes me nervous, so I just leave. But anyway, the band was playing for us on our guns, shooting it out. Well, they didn't know the difference. They stopped in their tracks and got back in the bus. They were so scared. We laughed our butts off. But you got to give the Army credit. They tried. They gave us a real good meal, and that was Thanksgiving. Rest of the time, you just got by. That's all.
What was the weather like for you pretty much the whole time you were there?
It's on a parallel to Boston as far as your latitude and longitude goes.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their severe winters. They have their humidity in the summer. I remember in the summertime, I was on a ridge. We changed batteries on an antenna, and we saw a couple of strange looking, I guess they were beetles, grasshoppers, or whatever. That's the same day that I saw one of our jets go into a cloud, and there was a Piper Cub spotting plane went into the opposite side of the cloud. It collided. The guy in the jet went down. It just flamed out, and he just went over an angle, just went straight down and crashed. He tried to eject, but it was too late. The guy in the Piper Cub, he jumped out in a parachute. And the other, see, when they have sorties, there's always 4. 2 would go in and napalm and strafe, while the other 2 would go in and napalm and bomb. Then they'd reverse roles, and we could always eat well when the Navy brought in and sent in sorties like that. We'd have about a half hour where we could get out and walk around because there wasn't anybody on the other side going to get up when that happened.
No.
So it was safe. Get your baths, you could eat, you could, kind of bring in your laundry, whatever you wanted to do. And the other 3 just circled around while they sent in a search party to get the guy from the Piper Cub, which I understand they got him. Pilot in the jet died because he was too low when he ejected. But that was summertime. And then in the fall, I rotated, in fact, just in the first snowfall.
Oh,
in
yeah,
December.
lucky.
Yeah. It just started to get cold. So the weather was pretty much like you'd have in Boston. Okay?
Here we go. During any combat, did you or anybody else kill or take a prisoner of war at all?
Well, I came close, I guess you'd say. I never had to pull a trigger and face a guy and shoot him. I did pass over coordinates over the radio to a spotter plane. No, from a spotter plane threw me to the tank, who then blew some people up. The closest I came was guarding on my off days some dead Chinese people.
Mm.
And you saw the picture in there of the guy. And when GRO, which was Graves Registration Office, came up with their zipper bags, body bags, rolled him over, I didn't know that when you move someone like that, there was air trapped in his lungs, and he lets out and I about just didn't make it.
Crapped your pants?
I pulled off my weapon, had it cocked and ready to shoot him because I thought he was still alive suddenly for a short moment. But no, I'll tell you something maybe a lot of people don't realize. When our guys were captured on patrol, they'd sometimes keep them, sometimes they'd let them go. When they'd come back, they'd have their fingernails pulled out, they'd have their earlobes sliced.
Ow.
All kinds of torture, bamboo, shoots, stuck up where it shouldn't be.
Oh!
Oh, yeah, they were pretty bad. So as a result, whenever we captured anybody, from the time they put their hands up and came across the line at the front, at the top of the hill, by the time they got down through by my truck at the bottom of the hill, every one of them had their teeth bashed in because the guys would take the butt of their M1s and let them have it. Oh, sure. That was their way of... So most of them come down with their front mouth bleeding, their lips and their teeth. Now, they just smashed the hell out of it because it was in retaliation for the way our people were treated. And I don't blame them.
Were you wounded at all?
No.
Except for that
very
crack in your nose.
Well, that's... Yeah, sometimes Purple Hearts are not what they seem. We had a second lieutenant as an operation, or as a signal officer. His only experience, he'd been a TV salesman in the States.
Oh, gee.
He didn't know what he was doing. He used to stick his head in the radio truck, and we always had communication checks every half hour. One with voice, and the other half hour with code, and we'd tell him there was something special coming off of the radio, and he wouldn't know any difference, and he'd duck out. But he had an antenna slice him on the finger, came off during a shelling. So we went to the medics and got it stitched, a couple stitches, and as a result, when we went back to the rear, we had a parade, and one of the people that got a Purple Heart was our second lieutenant.
Goofball head that...
Well, it was just the way some things are. I mean, you'd expect a guy that is out there and gung-ho and John Wayne to really deserve one, but whatever. But no, I was blessed. I never got hurt. I got my nerves shattered practically at times with being shelled. And like I said, that sniper that one time. And they always told you that you never hear the one that's coming in to get you, which made it nice because you hear all these shells dropping around. And for all you knew, your mind was telling you, well, maybe there's one coming right in right now since I can't hear it. That's going to land right on us. But we were very fortunate. No.
See anybody else like save a life or kill somebody?
I didn't have to save anyone's life. I did see a buddy that got on a stretcher, and the medic picked his head up by his hair, and then when he dropped him back on the stretcher about a foot, it sounded like a bag of bones. It wasn't too easy to see that, but no, there was a lot of action going on around me. I was in the middle of it. I got $54 a month extra for what they call foxhole pay. No, I didn't have to, like I said, go out and gun anybody down. Although we had another close call when we even got back to the rear, rotate. They had a guy called Bed Check Charlie. And what he did, he had an open cockpit airplane, and he used to fly overhead in the night and drop hand grenades down on you.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, if you didn't, and once you heard the engine, you just kind of watched where he was because if he flew right over your head, you tried to make sure you were,
Anybody tried
protected.
to shoot him at all, or?
Oh, sure. Guys would let go, and once in a while they'd know they'd hit the gas tank, but nothing would happen. But it was a slow flying,
like
single wing plane.
World War II plane.
I guess. I never saw it in daylight, but he'd come over at night. You'd hear him. He was called Bed Check Charlie. Well, another thing too, our medics, a lot of them lost lives because when our own wounded, or our own dead, were up at the front the next day, after a battle, we'd always go up and pull them back. Our guys would cover the medics while they pulled them back so they could have a decent burial. And a lot of times the Chinese would leave a hand grenade with the pin pulled under a guy's armpit.
Booby trap him.
Sure. Then when our people, and their own people too, you saw the picture I got in
North Korean
of the chink. His foot's blown off and part of his face. And I don't know which one got him, but oh yeah.
All right. What was, or how was your unit's relationship with the other branches of service? Like, did you see Marines, or was it all Army around there?
Well, I was, of course,
all
Army there. We respected the Navy for what they did for us, and the Marines, the Army always have a rivalry going. When some of our guys would go into have R&R, rest and recuperation, not really, rest and relaxation. Over in Japan, you were allowed to do that for 1 week. They'd get into bar fights all the time with these guys. I never took it because it meant I could go home a week earlier. So I passed it up. I didn't feel like going over to Japan and carouse the bars and get in trouble when I could maybe get out of that area 1 week earlier.
Yeah.
It seemed better to me.
What about NATO forces at all? Anything around there, or did you ever?
Yeah, we saw some of them. In fact, in the back of my scrapbook, as you saw, is a NATO leaflet that was dropped over the lines, asking them or suggesting to them that they surrender. All they had to do was bring that over, and our people would supposedly treat them humanely. And I guess for the most part they did. But no, I was mostly in and surrounded by just Army people. When we did leave out of Incheon, that was Navy personnel. Again, we didn't have much to do with Air Force or Marines, mostly Navy.
What was your rank in Korea? You started out as a private, and then what happened?
When I got to Korea, through time and grade, I became a PFC, and then I just after I got back, I became a corporal, and then just before I got out, I became a sergeant.
Okay. Did you receive any medals or citations at all, or?
Yeah, we did. We got the usual combat infantryman's badge that you see on most people who have been in that. It's kind of a rifle with a wreath around it that's blue. We got 2 Bronze Stars. We got some UN awards and ribbons. If you just spent time in a battle zone for over 30 days, it automatically qualified you for some of these things, and that's what we got. Because since we were in 2 different pushes, that's where the Bronze Stars came from.
What kind of weapons or firepower did your unit have? Mostly everybody had M1s, or was there?
Well, like I said earlier, we were a regimental combat team. We had
everything
from your lowly 45 on your hip through the bazookas and the tanks and all that shit.
Now, did everybody carry 45 or just the officers?
No, mostly your non-coms and our officers carried 45s, but that wasn't enough. Oftentimes they carried that and your carbine. And what we would do...
What's a carbine?
Carbine is a smaller semi-automatic weapon that you could put a banana clip into it and tape the other one to it, so you could literally let off 50 rounds if you had to.
Oh.
Real quick, and they were lightweight, and they were accurate enough for close combat. What you would do is when you got there, you'd try to find someone who was rotating. And they would want your M1 because you had to rotate with what you came in with. So they would give you their carbine. And then when you got ready to leave, you did the same thing that they did. So most of my time over there, I lugged around, instead of that heavy M1, I had a carbine, which was like I have one today.
What's rotating?
Rotating is you put your time in and then you're rotated away from the zone and you come back to the States. I got a 30-day leave and then landed in Seattle, and they flew me down to San Francisco, and then I got home to LA by myself. And I had 30 days, and I was then reassigned to White Sands Proving Grounds, Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Did you develop any close relationships with people at all in Korea, or did you stay in contact at all after you got out of the...
Well, during the Korean conflict, I had one guy named Dink. He was from New York area, and we had a close relationship going. He was probably, I guess you'd say, my best friend during that time. But after, we had another Italian called Angelo Frataccioli. I always remember that name. And we had maybe 4 or 5 of us that were pretty close. In fact, Dink came out of the school and was assigned to the same outfit that I was from Japan, So we had a thing going there, but afterwards everyone kind of split. I think I saw, if I remember right, 2 or 3 guys from my outfit down at White Sands because we were all signal. But beyond that, no lasting after the war writing or anything like that. No.
Okay. After your tour of duty, was Las Cruces your final destination?
No. I spent maybe 6 months down at. I was actually assigned to Holloman Air Research Development Center, which was 40 some odd miles further out in the desert, and that's, by the way, next door to Alamogordo, which is where the first atomic bomb was set off in the desert. When I was out there, the Nike missiles were being tested. I was a driver for the captain, and oftentimes when I'd be out in the desert, they'd have roadblocks, and you'd have to sit there for a half hour in the heat while some particular missile was test fired. Alamogordo is also where that guy tested all the G forces on the sled. Remember reading about
Oh, okay.
Holloman also had Navy flyers, and those idiots. You'd be parked on the airport runway area where the gate came down because you were going over to the motor pool, and when they were taking off, they'd aim right for you. You'd have to dive out of your Jeep to get into the ground. You're sure they were going to hit you. They'd laugh like hell about it. About once a month, they'd crack one of their planes up because they were just squirrels, that's all. After that, my final year, I was transferred to Fort MacArthur, San Pedro, California, where I was assigned to what they call post publications. That's all the forms that the Army operated on. And we were for the whole 6th Army area there. Also, the weekend warriors would come in. We had everything from blank discharges and identifications and bad conduct discharges, and which we'd always laugh and write one up on a guy. But all the different forms that the service needed to operate, they would. In fact, it was fun being a sergeant to tell a colonel or captain or anything, "Sir, you can't have 200. I'm going to give you 50." And we had the authority to do that when they'd order forms, So, that final year was kind of good when you think about it, because I was living in Southgate, California, which was, I don't know, 20 miles from Fort MacArthur.
So you could live at home.
Yeah, and I stayed home every night. It was like a job, except for one night where we had to stay overnight at the base.
So you just pushed paper your last year?
Pretty much.
Company clerk?
I wasn't a company clerk. Company clerk would have been typing and doing reports and that kind of stuff, but this was processing and filling orders and shipping out and that kind of stuff.
And your final rank was sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I guess the last question. Do you have any reflections on what you did in Korea, or any stories or anything else like that?
Well,
do you feel proud of what you did, or?
Oh, I feel proud that I went. I think the Army in general was good for me. I firmly believe that we ought to have universal military training, that when you get out of high school, you serve 2 or 3 years, you go through what you need to do. I think it's weans you away from the home life. Then when you come out, you could go pursue your college and not be fearful that you're not going to make it. I think that's the way they should go. Yeah, I'm glad I went. I'm thankful I didn't get hurt or have a lasting injury, other than, about my hearing. I didn't mention that earlier, but in basic training, we went out and zeroed in some weapons, and I got off that night. My ears were ringing. Well, by the next morning, they had quieted down, but then I was right alongside of some weapons, and instead of issuing us plugs, they said, "Oh, that'll go away." Well, my ringing, as you know, has never stopped. And I wish now I would have done something else about a disablement on it. I probably could have, maybe I don't know if they'd have done anything then or not, but I do have nerve damage there. But no, I don't regret going. I got to see some country I'd never probably other see before, like Japan and Korea.
Were you proud to be there, or?
Yeah, I pretty much was. I think it was the thing to do. I never regretted going. Luckily, I never had any real disability other than
Your hearing.
As a result, I got the GI Bill, as you know, helped me get into college. The California Veterans Program, called CalVet, helped me get into my first house. So they paid me back for what I did, I think, pretty much. I would have much rather been able to say, yeah, I went and I saw, rather than in any normal conversation say, well, I never got in. I got to see some country I wouldn't normally see, thanks to the Army, Japan, Korea, and of course even New Mexico. So no, I'm not sorry I went at all.
What'd you do after you got out?
Well, after
I mean, you didn't do anything to do with
well,
military at all, did you?
no. At the conclusion of my 3 years, they gave me both my honorable discharge and what's known as a DD 214, which is a separation of service. And
I mean, you didn't
bam,
have to
I never heard
volunteer.
from him.
Yeah.
Never heard from him again. I went on with my life. I stayed out, did nothing for about 2 months, and then had a next door neighbor who worked at Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. He suggested I work at night shift and go to school, take advantage of the GI Bill, which is what I did, as you know, as long as I could.
Oh, one more question. When Vietnam came up, did you ever want to go back over and help, or were you too old, or?
Well, Vietnam had a different posture entirely, and I never felt that I wanted to be in it. Number one, I was married and already had your sister. Um, Number two, the political environment at the time was so volatile that no, I didn't think I wanted to rush out and volunteer to go over there. And I'll tell you basically why. It has to do with Korea. Korea was the first armed conflict the United States got into and was told not to win it. As you know, General MacArthur
Wanted to
had
win
a
it.
problem with Harry S. Truman. See, when I joined my outfit in Korea, there were some veterans already
From World War II.
rotating. Well, no.
Oh no, from
Veterans
Korea.
from Korea. So I sit there and listen for a couple of weeks to their stories, and to a man, they all said that they could have pushed the Chinese back to the Yalu River, which is what MacArthur wanted to do. They had them on the run so much they didn't even have time to put out their own campfires.
Oh,
That's how
geez.
fast we were pushing them back up. And then MacArthur was told, stop at the 38. And he just couldn't handle that. He was the first general asked not to win a war. And it was hard, because particularly for him, he was a strong man. So as a result, it it kind of turned me off. If it had been a situation where we'd have gone in there and we'd have been attacked and uh, we were defending our country, yeah, I would have probably went in. I may not even had any choice. I might have been pulled in, even though I was married. But because of the political and, as I said, environment and atmosphere at the time, I really didn't have any desire to get in there, because of that. The closest I would have come would have been to got in and stayed stateside and relieved somebody to send them over. Could have done that. Anything else?
Well, that's it. Thanks for your time.
Oh, well, anytime, you know what to do.